The Unfiltered Business Podcast, a place where young professionals come together to grow, evolve, and change for the better. A place where success is accessible. Welcome to the show. Welcome back. It's the Unfiltered Business Podcast. I am your host, Derek Thomas. It is week 9. This week we have Nina Mueller on the show. She is a project manager at a creative agency up in San Francisco, but she's actually just recently moved in the past year back to Germany. So she's working remotely, starting a new team there. Very interesting stuff. I had a lot of fun talking with her. There's a short story that I tell at the beginning of the podcast, but she helped Allison and I right in the beginning really kind of get ourselves going off on the right foot. We had this massive opportunity. I won't spoil the whole thing, but something that we were totally underqualified for. And she helped us really put this deck together. We didn't end up getting the job, but without her, I don't know where the hell we would have been. But we go into kind of what she was doing right out of college, her thoughts on, she was a volleyball player, kind of how she thought she could what she was going to do after she got out of college, right? She talks about how she really had nothing on her resume, just super, super relatable stuff that I think a lot of us think about, but not a lot of people talk about. And I loved how transparent she was and how vulnerable she was. It was really, really cool. And she has such a great success story. So hearing that people of her, echelon or whatever you want to call it, have these thoughts too. Again, super, super relatable. So I want you guys to really enjoy this. Nina is awesome. She's just a superstar. So on a more personal level, we're doing something a little bit different this morning. I've told you guys before, I typically record these episodes Monday evenings. The episodes typically come out on Wednesdays. I record them on Monday, put all our videos together, upload them, whatever. I got super slammed last night. Didn't get a chance to do it. So it is just after 6:30 a.m. on Tuesday morning. We're giving this a shot. My brain is not fully loaded up yet. I got my coffee here, but we're just running with it. And this is the Unfiltered Business Podcast. So there's not going to be any edits. It's just me kind of running through my thoughts as they come into this silly little brain of mine. But I wanted to bring up one thing before we get into the show that I was super, super proud of. We've been onboarding some new employees lately. We have some social media stuff going on with a couple of new clients, and we've had to find some help to kind of help move these things along and really, help the clients succeed on their goals. And so Allison and I were going through our Google Suite and making sure that, everyone had the proper emails, our contracts were all in place. And I realized that we had 8 Polygon emails now. And for those who work in bigger businesses, it may seem a little underwhelming, but if we look back 18 months, Polygon was 2 emails. It was me and Allison, my wife. So to fast forward 18 months and have 8 employees working for us, it's pretty freaking cool, and it's not something that it was funny. Yesterday I was pretty sluggish. We had a long weekend and I was moving pretty slow, but it gave me a chance to really sit back and kind of think about it, because typically I'm kind of go, go, go all the time and my brain's bouncing off the walls and that sort of thing. But because I was a little exhausted yesterday, I was able to kind of sit back and go like, hey, like, look at this. Check out what we did. Like, this is our business, and we have people that are working for us. We have multiple designers, we have multiple developers, we have social media people, we have project managers. Like, it's really cool. And I'm happy. Are we exactly where I want to be? No. Are we, if I was to look back when we started the company, or when I joined the company 3.5 years ago and said like, hey, this is where we're going to be revenue wise, like, we may not be exactly where I want it to be, but those numbers are so arbitrary too. Like, and when I set a 3-year goal 3 years ago, it was not based on anything. So, again, because I was so exhausted yesterday, I was able to sit back and really appreciate how far we've come. And it really, really made me feel good, especially because we're actually going on a vacation next week. Our first real vacation since our honeymoon back in 2017. And I'm so glad that I had this kind of realization, because I think I can actually sit back and appreciate all the things that we've done. Is our business perfect? Hell no. Do we have a lot of work to do? Of course. But again, like, what is the journey if you cannot enjoy it? So just want to give you that little tidbit of information. Really cool. Allison and I are really proud. There's lots of new cool things to come. I want you guys to get into this episode with Nina. She's a rock star. For any of you people that are looking to maybe get into the creative space, she's been working at multiple branding agencies over the past 10 years, and she's just really excelled. She's climbed the ladder at every company she's been at. She's now working, in a different country. So there's a lot of things you can take from this. And she's also just a great friend, and we miss them. They've been in Germany since last May. But again, she's awesome. Her husband is awesome. I miss them both. We're supposed to plan a trip to go to Germany soon, so hopefully we can actually do that, pending the craziness going on in the world. But anyways, let's get to the episode. Nina Mueller. Enjoy. All right, now joining the show all the way from Germany, we have Nina Mueller. How are you, Nina?
I'm good. It's a Friday night here in Germany, and I couldn't think of a better way to spend my Friday night during lockdown than with you.
I love it. Well, I appreciate you being here. And there's a lot of cool things we're going to talk about today. And I want to start off with like a quick story to kind of tell you a little bit about how I think of you and how Allison and I think of you, because this was really important to us. So like 4 or 5 months into me joining Allison, we had this opportunity come across our desk for a upwards of like $500,000 job. Like, we were so outgunned for this. Do you remember this? It was
I
like
remember, yeah.
yeah. So we didn't know what the
Big
hell we were
one.
doing. We were like used to building websites for small businesses and doing logos. And we reached out to you and we're like, what the hell do we do? Like, how do we do this? Right. I can't let this opportunity go untouched. Right. We at least have to take a shot at it. We didn't end up getting it, but my point of the story was you helped us so much. Like, you took so much time out of your busy schedule to help us with the proposal process, even with like some estimate stuff. And again, like, we didn't end up getting it, but it was such a good experience that, it's something I could never take away. And I think it showed like how helpful you could be. And I think it kind of streams into what we're going to talk about with the project management side. But that was such a helpful experience for us. And we can't thank you enough for that help.
Yeah, happy to help. I just feel like when you came to me with that, I just knew exactly what you were feeling. And having been in the agency for so long, I was like, I definitely know I can help. So
it was so
happy
helpful.
to.
I mean, even just like, how do we put a deck together for something like this? Like, we were used to putting like 4-page proposals together, but I mean, this thing was 50 slides talking about the progression, the process, everything. And I don't know what it would have looked like if we didn't talk with you. So it was a huge help. And it's actually kind of shifted the way that we do presentations altogether because of that feedback you gave us 3-4 years ago. So again, it was super helpful, and our agency world has like changed ever since that point. So thanks again.
Cool. You're welcome.
So I want to talk to you about kind of I want to know how you got into the whole like creative agency world. Like, that's not something that, I'm curious as to how you broke into that.
Yeah, definitely. It was definitely an accident. So I moved right after Santa Clara University, like the day I graduated, the day after I had booked my flight, and I moved to Germany. Mm-hmm. And I was working in Germany at a big photo printing company. They're sort of like the Shutterfly of Europe.
Okay.
And I started there in like product management. I was only speaking German, and that was pretty hard to like work at like a corporation in German only. And then after a year or two, I heard that they had like a white label presence in the US that was very small. At the time it was called smilebooks.com. And so it was like personalized photo books. and they needed a project manager for all the e-commerce sites. And I would be speaking mostly English. And so I was like, all right, I want to do this. So I sort of switched over teams, and that was the first time I started working on websites and with developers.
Okay.
Started working in like a CMS, and I kind of really enjoyed even though I was, again, just a project manager, no design background, nothing like that, I really enjoyed working with designers and the developers because I sort of had my own control over the websites and what it was
Yeah.
going to look like and what were the offerings. And because it's sort of this type of like commerce retail type of site, it was very seasonal. So I got to work on the campaigns. And so I sort of had my first little glimpse in like what that type of job could potentially look like. And then
Yeah.
after 3.5 years in working in Germany, my husband and I decided to move back to the Silicon Valley, back to the Bay Area, because I was like 24 and felt like I was missing out sort of on the like from the Bay. And so I need to come back and sort of see what I can do there.
Yeah.
And my cousin had worked at a digital marketing agency in San Francisco called ROI DNA. She got me in at a job there as a mid-level project manager. And with my experience of working with developers and designers, and they offer primarily services around SEO, SEM, analytics, but also they had a very small creative team and built websites and did some branding.
Okay. So you fit right in.
So I sort of like dived right in there, and it was the absolute perfect environment because it was a small agency. We were about 30 people. Really tight group, very chill, very cool, a lot of really brilliant, smart, incredibly hard workers, but we had so much fun. And it was just one of those roles where it was like, roll up your sleeves and just learn about all the different types of services, from web development to web design to launching SEO campaigns for like Virgin America. And so I sort of moved up the ladder there pretty quick by just, I don't know, working super hard because I just absolutely loved it. I just had so much fun.
Yeah.
I always took on the most clients, started taking on bigger clients. And then I got introduced into management roles. And that's when I started being sort of managing the project management team from there.
Okay.
And after about 3.5 years, I had an incredible mentor there. She's the COO, Michelle Harburn. She was 100% my mentor and just taught me everything about the client services side. Because you can work with designers and developers and you can do all the amazing things, but at the end of the day, we have to make our clients happy, right? We have to stay within our budgets. We have all these expectations to meet. And there's this whole other side of project management other than just doing that. And that's sort of building the client relationships, building the trust. And that's where the most important part of it essentially is outside of the work and execution itself.
Right.
And
well, sorry, I don't mean to interrupt.
go ahead, I can pause.
So there's a couple things I want to touch on. And the thing that I find interesting that I didn't realize kind of breaking into the creative space is I was a project manager in the construction world, right? So construction's like, we're laying it out and then you build it and then like, you're kind of like, that's it. Whereas creative work is so subjective, right? Design is always subjective. And I found that I had to be much more empathetic, much more, it's a completely like different mindset dealing with creative people on projects because it's such a vulnerable space, right? It's like, hey, I poured my heart and soul into this design, this web, whatever it may be. It's not as simple as like, here's the construction process, I built it, go. And so I'm curious to hear like your thoughts on when maybe you give work off to a client and they don't like it and you have to report back to your team. Like how do you go about something like that? Because it's something that I struggle with all the time.
Yeah. This is where the bridge to butcher shop is actually so interesting because eventually I wanted to get more into that creative space.
Yeah.
I wanted more out of just the digital marketing. And I was just so intrigued about working with designers who are doing videos and concepts and campaigns and all these big things.
Yeah.
And, I got into butcher shop and I was like, this is next level caliber agency, creative agency.
Like big time clients you guys are working
Brand
with.
agency, exactly. And one of the most important things that butcher shop has taught me about the creative world is to orient yourself around objective data points.
Mm,
Right? We want to remove the subjectivity from everything, because you
interesting.
can create the most beautiful, aesthetically pleasing deliverables, but if it doesn't hit the mark, if it doesn't hit the audience, it doesn't hit the strategy, then it's not going to fly through, essentially, right?
Right.
And
Like,
so
why are you doing the things that you're doing?
exactly. And so that's where the discovery process and the strategic process at a creative agency like Butcher Shop has become one of the biggest differentiators of, I think, why we're so successful, is we put such an emphasis on doing tons of legwork up front, so that we're making sure that all of our decision making is rooted in everything that we've researched, everybody that we've talked to, we've researched the market. And we typically spend 4 to 5 weeks just on that before any project even starts.
Right.
And then what we'll do is we orient all of that into a strategic idea and sort of this North Star. And that becomes a pillar that the clients, they approve, they buy into it. It's maybe an internal tagline or something like that.
Yeah.
And that's sort of the jumping off point, that all creative is going to stem from this that we decided and that we defined together. And then that's where we go from there. And so you sort of need these like moments where you're checking back on, okay, we're executing, we're designing, we're creating all this amazing work. But if it doesn't ladder up to all the work we've done so far and what the client's already approved in terms of our strategy, then it's not going to make sense. And what we present isn't going to come across authentic or relevant to like what they're actually trying to do, essentially.
Right. I mean, I love this. It's so cool. And this is why I love talking with creative peoples, because there's a difference between creatives, and there's creatives that can kind of like articulate their own ideas. And this idea behind this North Star, I love that. I'm going to steal that from you. But it's this cool idea where it's almost like you're writing a book, right? It's like you can't write the book unless you know the ending, right? You need to know where we need to get to, and then you realize like how to get there. I think that's so cool. And I think the sad part, at least on the small business side, because that's the majority of the work that we do, is like we would love to do all this discovery work, right? Is like, let's understand, let's really deep dive into the competitive analysis. Let's get an understanding of where you guys want to be, even talking about goals down the road, and like how to actually get them there. But unfortunately, like a lot of the stuff that we do, there just simply isn't a budget for it. But that's what's so intriguing about these bigger agencies like Butcher Shop, because you guys, the companies that you guys bring in, have these resources to be able, like, we need to spend money and get an understanding of what it is that you guys do to get to that point. I love that. And I think it's cool that you were able to kind of make this transition from like these smaller agencies where you're learning, you got this mentor. I want to talk about that as well. But you're able to kind of build yourself up to this point where you're working with Nike and Converse and like other big companies like that have this goal, that there needs to be reasoning behind what it is that you're doing. So I love that. I want to circle back to two things. So is project management something you ever thought you'd be doing, like when you were in college? Was that part of the plan?
No,
Okay.
I don't think there was a plan, because I was obsessed with volleyball, as you know. Sports was, sport was life.
Yeah.
And, I always have this issue sort of with the school system where it just wasn't for me. I wasn't a great test taker. Like, I did not have the best grades. I wasn't terrible. I mean, I got through and I did what I needed to do, because in order to play sports, you have to have a GPA and things like that. But
you did go to Santa Clara too, though, so
I did go to Santa Clara. I got lucky there. I somehow got through Santa Clara.
Right.
But I studied marketing and I minored in German. And I remember at one point I had this moment where we were sitting in a resume building class in college, and it was like 50% of the class were athletes and the other 50% were like students. And all the other students were writing about their internships over the summer that they had at like Morgan Stanley and Apple. Right. And we were sitting there like volleyball coach last summer.
Yeah.
Like, we had like coaching like children's camps. Like, I had nothing on my resume, and I started panicking. I was like, what am I going to do with my life? It's not going to be volleyball forever. I had so many injuries. I'm like, I'm not going to overcome these injuries.
Yeah.
And I just sort of, I feel like so much of what I've learned was from athletics in terms of work ethic and discipline. And if you apply it to whatever you do, it just worked for me. And I was like, I'm going to apply to this job, and I'm going to do this internship, and I'm going to do the best job I can possibly do, because, sort of competitive at the core.
Oh yeah.
And that just always led me to my next step, which led me to my next step, which led me to my next step. And so I had nothing figured out, but I
Right.
absolutely love where I've ended, and it's just because I stayed true to what I know and what I don't.
Totally.
Um, yeah,
And my original idea for this podcast was like, I want to talk to athletes because there is like this through line with success in business because of like,
yeah,
I talked about this with Chief, but it was like, you have those cookie cutter answers with like teamwork, hard work, work ethic, all that stuff. But it's like, it's so true
yeah,
that because I had similar feelings to you. I was a baseball player in college. It was my life. I didn't have a job. Like my resume was nothing when I
yeah,
finished school. And it was like, fuck, what the hell am I going to do? Right. But when
yeah,
you sit back and you realize, like, okay, I've been working my ass off my whole life. Right. It may not have been in the professional sense, but like that work ethic is going to transfer through. And as long as you work hard, you'll figure things out. And so I think, I think like that idea behind finishing school and you're like, I have no idea like what's going to happen. I think a
yeah,
lot of people, I think the majority of people feel like that even when they're in 30, you
yeah,
know? It's just
yeah.
like you got lucky and found something that you like and you worked your ass off and you were able to climb the ladder. So I love that.
Yeah, yeah. And I just remember having a feeling in college where I was always swarmed with injuries and I always had to battle my way back to a starting position and then I
Mm,
would get beat out and then I was injured again and I felt like I was successful at volleyball at a really young age. And then college was tough for me
mm,
and I remember feeling like a failure. I remember that feeling specifically and being like, I don't want to feel this way in life. I'm not doing great at volleyball anymore. That used to be the thing I was great at. And I don't care what I do next. I just know that I want to be good at it.
right.
I'll figure it out, and that's sort of
Yeah.
how I approached it.
Damn, Nina, we're like the same person, I feel like. Like I was I'll pat myself on the back here for a second, but I was like my height, 6'2", at like 12 years old. So it was like, oh my God, Derek's gonna be the next like phenom, right? And then as I kept getting older, everyone else started to grow. And I was just kind of like I'd already finished everything. And so by the time like high school ended, I was a good athlete, but it
I
was
remember.
yeah, it was like no longer the absolute stud. And then I had a similar thing in college where it's like I just kept getting injured. And I was always seen as like the captain of the team, but it was more like Derek's a good player. So it was like the talent makes you the captain, not necessarily the leadership side of it. And then once I got injured, all that confidence was gone. It was like, now what? Like, I can't fall back. It was easy to be the captain and be a leader when you can go out and pitch a great game. Like, everyone will just be like, yeah, he's the best, whatever. But when
Yeah,
that's gone, it's like, oh shit. And I talked about this in an earlier podcast, but when I injured my arm and I knew my career was done, it was like, oh shit, now what?
yeah,
And going back to what you said, it's like, I don't want to ever feel like that ever. So like,
yeah,
as long as you work your ass off, like you can kind of move through that, but it is a scary time. It's really fucking
yeah,
scary.
definitely.
I want to talk about your move to Germany because this is something that you lived there beforehand, like you said. Your husband is from Germany and moved
Mhm.
out here to work at Tesla, and then you guys have been able to work your way back. I mean, what was the progression, and how did that whole thing work out, and how's it going?
Yeah, it has been quite the journey because we've planned this for a long time.
Yeah,
We both feel really lucky that we did so well in San Francisco for our standards of what we think is well. We were like, we're doing so well.
I'd say you guys did
For
pretty
others,
well.
maybe that's not well, but for us, we were really proud of ourselves.
Yeah,
We actually loved being in San Francisco.
I loved
Him,
your place. I wish we could have bought your place.
I know, I still like hurts my heart that we're not in the city anymore
Mm,
there. But Felix coming from Germany, getting lucky to get into Tesla thanks to some very important referrals from our friend group
yeah.
essentially. And then me working my way up in the city, we were like, okay, we know that one day we want to make it back to Germany because we think this is a really great country. We know we want to build a family here.
Hmm.
There is a little bit more of that work-life balance that we crave. We've killed ourselves the last, 8 years in the city,
Yeah.
um, and still want to continue to grow our careers. But how do we do that? Leaving the Bay Area, which was the scariest thought for me because once you're in it, you're just like in this bubble and you're like, if I leave, I'm not a part of it anymore.
Right. You're getting it
I'm not
left
a part of
behind.
this like movement. Like I'm going to be left behind. And
Right.
I've done all this work. What's it for? If not to continue to move forward and not take two steps back.
Mm.
And so Felix and I were very intentional about what we wanted to do. So we were like, what would be the best case scenario? Well, the best case scenario, if we were to move to Germany, would be to keep our jobs. Is that even possible? And so we started with that plan in mind 2 years ago. We were like, we want to keep our jobs. Butcher Shop has European clients. I was originally brought on for a German client. I was the senior account manager 4 years ago for them. I was like, I know we can have a presence in Europe. And Trevor Hubbard, our CEO, he was always flying back and forth to doing lots of meetings there and conferences. And he also early on felt that there could be a possibility that if I ever made my way back, we could do something together. So I grabbed onto that and was like, we're going to make this happen.
Yeah.
So that sort of was like, all right, Nina's got her footing a little bit. We have no idea what it's going to look like. I have no idea what I'm going to do. Or do we open an office? Do we not? Like, we didn't even, obviously had no idea what was about to happen in the world. And then for Felix, Tesla being such a famous, well-known company who tended to go up and down when it comes to layoffs and hiring and layoffs and hiring, because he's been there for 7 years now, and a few years ago it looked a little bit different there, right, in terms of stability and things like that. So he wasn't really putting his eggs in his basket, but he knew that he wanted to keep his job. And so he started working with the EMEA team over there on he's customer success analyst.
Yeah.
And so we sort of just had a vision and worked towards that vision, and we fortunately managed to keep it. And I have my job here now as the global program director of Butcher Shop Europe.
Yeah.
And Felix is still working for Tesla. He has a German
I love
contract.
that you guys were able to make it work. Like,
I know we don't even know how we did it. But I think it was this, like, we have a vision, and in order to keep that vision, we need to keep a level of performance.
Right.
And you can't sort of take your eye off the ball. We have to continue to bring tons of value to our company somehow in order to maintain this, because we know that this is hard to do.
Right.
So I think that we were very, very focused on that and still managed to do it.
That's great. I love it. And I know that you guys were really wanting to move back, so I'm glad you're able to make it work. Is that work-life balance that you mentioned, is that working out? Because starting a European, partnership agency, whatever you want to call it, is no easy feat. So
yeah, I think it definitely is. I would say I don't work, 60, 70-hour work weeks anymore. So that's already a huge plus.
That's a win.
But we also moved over here during a pandemic, which makes things always a little bit more difficult. But Butcher Shop is always the type of agency to lean into what's happening and not lean out of it. And so we're completely digital now. We're a virtual agency only.
I was gonna say, you guys closed your office, right?
Closed our office, financial district, which breaks my heart because I love that office. But it was this moment of no, we want to be global, and in order to do so, everyone's going to work remote, and we're going to go all over the world. And so my hours are sort of up and down right now because we're launching a product, and I'm working with the US team, but also working on building European partnerships, being parts of conferences here as well to sort of get the Butcher Shop name and the product that we're launching called Prio coming in March. And so it's a little bit, my hours are a little bit all over, but I do find tons of downtime. And I know Butcher Shop wanted that for me as well, knowing that that was part of the intention of being here.
That's good. And I saw that you and Felix have been golfing more, which I love.
Yes,
so,
I picked up golf. I would have never thought, but I love it. It's so hard. That's why I knew it. I never wanted to do it because I knew it was too hard. I was like, I can't. This is hard,
it's addicting because it's so hard. And I remember we went up and stayed with you guys that one. It was Masters weekend, and I was like, I have to watch this. We're no getting around this. And you and Allison were like, oh, so boring. God, I remember it was like everyone was taking a nap, but I'm glad that you guys finally came around to it.
I have a mini putting green right here in our office. That's how serious it's gotten.
I love it. That makes me so happy. Nina, this has been awesome. I really appreciate all the insights. I have one last question for you, and this is a new question that I'm going to start asking all of our guests. So you're the first one. So it's more like, where's the vision going? Where do you want to see yourself in 5 years? What's the plan, if you have one?
Yeah, that's a great question. Because of where I'm at right now, which is a little bit in startup land in a way, Butcher Shop is changing the definition of what an agency model is. We have a venture arm now. We're
Mm,
developing products. We're creating new pipelines for revenue outside of just our project work. And we're starting to see a lot of other agencies start doing something similar. And
mhm.
we've been working on that for a while. And so I see myself continuing sort of down that path. I've sort of taken on a new role where I've never launched my own product before, essentially working with developers, to the marketing, to the branding, to all that. And so I'm learning so much. But we also want to shape our service offerings here in Europe and see how we can be valuable to European companies.
Yeah.
There's so many amazing agencies here. There's a lot of boutique agencies, there's brand consultancies, large and small.
Mm,
So I want to know that in 5 years from now, that butcher shop and myself feeling confident what we've done, we've sort of found our footing, we've brought value to our clients and to partners here that we can sort of bring from the Silicon Valley that others don't have here,
yeah,
essentially.
yeah.
And just feel confident that we sort of did all this during a pandemic. You know, we're so lucky to have our jobs, and we're so lucky to be able to go out and sort of take this moment to figure out what we're doing here. We
Yeah.
know a lot of people don't have that opportunity. So yeah, and I just want to feel really proud and that this was the right decision 5 years from now. I mean, I'm sure I'll be traveling back to outside lands and doing what I can. But
God, that sounds
yeah,
great. A
yeah,
concert right now. Oh my God, I
you
would.
know, I'm dying.
We just to wrap this up, Alice and I, probably the most fun we had last year was, well, they did Inside Lands, which was great. It was like indoor, like streaming on Twitch or something. But
I remember that.
they did in April, it was kind of like this live stream 3-day concert. And Alice and I were just, this was right in the beginning of quarantine when we thought it was going to be like 6 weeks long, right? And so we're like, we're going all out. We're like getting booze, like everything you could ever dream of for going to a festival, and we had like a festival in our living room. It was amazing, and it was probably one of the most fun that we've had during all of quarantine. So any way we can make like live music come back, I'm so in for that.
You know, I remember in the very beginning, a lot of DJs were like streaming their sets. And so we
Mm-hmm.
would go, oh, let's listen in. And we'd like be on our laptop and we'd be like, all right, a week later, I was like not dialing into those
I know.
streams anymore. So I was like, it's just
Like
not the
it's
same.
just not the same. It's not the same.
I
Well,
know.
Nina, this has been awesome. Thank you so much for your time.
Yeah.
We miss you. We want to come see you. Hopefully we
Come visit
can at
me,
some point.
please.
Yes, we would love that. Well, say hi to Felix for me. And thanks again for doing this.
Thanks so much for having me. This is fun.